Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Today, Bridget Griffin shared a video of her daily yoga routine, 2 self-help articles, and her new blog called Build Your Inner Bridge with Bridge. Girl, your sharing has turned into oversharing. No worries, Bridge. Geico has some info worth sharing with your 7 blog followers, like how you could save money on your car insurance, update your policy, and report a claim just by visiting geico.com. How's that for building your inner bridge? Bridge? Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Back Porch Writer, the show for writers, about writers, and writing, with your host, Corey Miller. Call Corey at 646-716-5063. Follow the show online at Blog Talk Radio and Facebook. Now, it's time to chat with the Back Porch Writer. Welcome to Back Porch Writer, the show for writers, about writers, and writing. I'm your host, Corey Miller. Today is February 2nd, 2016, and it's about 33 degrees or something outside. Now, let me tell you what happened in our area, and I'm super excited about this. So Saturday, we started getting messages, alerts about what was going to happen with our weather in the area. And it started out with, watches. We're going to have a winter storm watch for a little while. Well, that changed to winter storm warning for where we are specifically, but then Fremont, that is like 4 minutes from us, has a winter storm, a blizzard warning going on. So last night, nothing was happening. It was completely clear outside. I was so disappointed. Since Saturday, they've been telling us the snow is going to come, and there's no snow. I was thinking, seriously? Are they wrong again? But nope. This morning, I woke up, and there is snow everywhere. Blowing snow, just snow everywhere. It hasn't stopped snowing yet, and our deck is completely covered. Hard to see out our windows, though, because there's a lot of snow around on the windows and stuff, but super excited. Can't wait to get outside and play in the snow. The kids, of course, are home, so apologies if you happen to hear things in the background. That may happen, might not happen. We'll hope it doesn't happen, but it could is the point, because they have a snow day, and I think this might be their official first snow day. I'm not sure. And the school was super proactive about it because they sent us an alert well in advance. I didn't have to wake up at 6 this morning to find out that they were going to have school. I knew yesterday afternoon that they weren't going to have school. So I really appreciated that they let us all know that really, really early instead of, the day of. The question remains, will they have school tomorrow? Because if Fremont is getting a blizzard right now, maybe not. And for us, it's a lot of blowing snow right now, so tons of snowdrifts, I'm sure, but I can't go out yet, partly because, I'm doing the show, but also because it's still snowing and the wind is pretty strong at the moment, but super warm. Last week, in fact, on Saturday, Sunday, we had really, really warm weather, just unusually warm. It was 40-something degrees just a couple days ago, so really warm and just lovely, balmy. I'll tell you, it's balmy. People will be out in shorts, that sort of thing. And now, 33, wind blowing. Yeah, lots of snow. I'm loving it, absolutely loving it. So it'll be here for a little while. It won't melt right away. I'm very excited about this. So I'll be donning snow gear later and enjoying hot chocolate. And I hope you're having fun wherever you are. And maybe you have snow. I don't know. But if you don't, you can always come to Nebraska, where we, in fact, have snow. And you can build snow creatures and all of that. Not necessarily a snowman, just snow creatures. So today, my guest is Robert Buccellato, and he is an author and historian. His book that he has out now is about Jimmy Carter. It's Jimmy Carter in Plains, the presidential hometown. And so he's going to come on just in a couple seconds and tell us all about his book and what he's doing and how he published it and talk about its marketing, all that jazz. But before I have him come on, I want to remind you that the Womanly Art of Self-Defense podcast is available, and it's available through iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio. You can find it lots of places at this point. I just dropped the 5th episode yesterday, and it was all about intuition. And it's these are short episodes. Unless I interview somebody, I keep the episodes pretty short, anywhere from 15 to maybe 19 minutes, sometimes even 10. I like to keep them brief, to the point, get you what you need, and then move on. So that's what yesterday's episode was. So you can go check that out. It's all about intuition, lots of fun information there. And that's the Womanly Art of Self-Defense podcast. And you can find it over on the website too, womanlyartofselfdefense.com. I did check my schedule, and I know I have the show Back Porch Writer is booked through March, but I know that there's openings after that. So if you're interested, just go over to the backporchwriter.com website, go to the guest spots page, and then follow the directions from there. Do remember that when on the questions, when I'm asking for a bio, send me some sort of bio to work with, so like 3 to 5 sentence bio that I can work with, because I use that for the show page and I use that for the page that I put up over on Blog Talk Radio. So that helps. And if you have questions, just shoot me an email. So without further ado, I want to bring on Robert to the show. I'm not sure if he can hear me just yet, so we'll wait. I mentioned our weather's kind of wonky, so hopefully our internet connection was working great just a second ago before the show. We were talking and had no problems. But now the wind is blowing, so that could have changed a few things. So, Robert, can you hear me? If you can hear me, Robert, you may want to disconnect and call back into the show, into the program, and I'll just keep going and wait for you to call back in, because it looks like it's having a hard time getting you into the studio. So give that a shot. So he's going to do that. See, this is the way that it works on Blog Talk Radio. It's kind of cool. You have a studio online that you can look at, and I can see the numbers. So when people call into the show, I can see the numbers. I don't see names of people. So people, when they call in, you can hear me talking. I just can't hear you, and so he's able to call back in. So let's see if we can get him on this time.
Hey, do you hear me?
Oh, Robert, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yeah, that worked out beautifully. I had a feeling that we'd need to do that. It's the wind. Yeah. A lot of people who listen to the show know I live out in the country, and so the wind is amazingly strong where I am.
Now, when you were talking, you were mentioning that your kids are home for snow day. I'm actually I'm in the process of checking out of a hotel, and my 5-month-old son just woke up. So I think so. If you hear any grumblings or anything in the background, guys, it's either hers or mine. But
that's all right.
Anyway,
so,
my book just came out yesterday. It's on Jimmy Carter in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, and their efforts to win him the presidential election in 1976, which is part of the 40th anniversary of that election.
So what made you decide to focus on Jimmy Carter and this book?
Well, my granddad was in the Florida House of Representatives for 20 years, and Florida is of course neighbors to Georgia. And while he was in the Florida House, Jimmy Carter was a governor and a president. And my granddad actually did the solar panel legislation that Florida has, and he did it based on the efforts and in some cases the guidance of his aides that were speaking to the Carter White House. And it was during their big push to move towards more alternative forms of energy. And so he was also the only Democratic president that my granddad had during that time period, because my granddad is a Democrat, and all the other presidents we had when he was in office were Republican. So I would always see these little Carter mementos when I was a kid growing up. I'd see Carter inaugural programs and invitations, and I'd see peanuts everywhere, and he would just tell me stories about him, and eventually, my mom, who is a politics nut and a history buff, she would start to get me on the presidency. My grandparents would buy me books on the presidency. And eventually, we'd start to make day trips to Plains, Georgia. And from there, I guess it was just the sort of unusual nature of his life and his presidency and his election that made it interesting. And, I began to write a book about 5 years ago. It's a full-length book on Jimmy Carter that I'm actually finishing right now. But during my research, I came upon this gentleman named Charles Plant, who was a photographer for the Carter campaign. And we got together, and he offered to give me these images. I went to Arcadia. I had just finished a book with them, and I said, would you be interested in this book? They said absolutely, and that was the whole ballgame.
So you mentioned Arcadia. Tell me a little bit more about Arcadia.
Arcadia is the largest publisher of local and state pictorial history in the nation. And basically what they do is they try to sort of encapsulate a town or an individual or a subject matter through photographs. Sometimes, it'll be 96 pages like mine. Sometimes it'll be longer, up to 200 pages. But they also have expanded recently. They now are they're now owning the History Press, which is another publishing company, and so they have full-length biographies and memoirs that they now also publish. But it's a publisher that is its focus is on giving the author as much independence as possible. And one of the great joys of this book was that I was not only the author, but I got to edit what images I wanted where. So it gave me a lot of freedom to shape not only the actual narrative of the story, but also the pacing of the images.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that the book, it just came out, released yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
But what I noticed in doing my research about you is you've already been out and about and talking about it. So tell me a little bit about your marketing efforts.
Absolutely. Yesterday I had a book launch with the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library, and a few hours before that I talked to NBC Atlanta, talking to you guys, and I'm going to be doing another podcast later this evening, and on Thursday I'm going to be speaking to the Chris Hayne radio show. And so basically, the whole process of marketing is to once you have a product, make it if you can find a way to make it a digital PDF, go ahead and send it to anybody that you deem would be interested or supportive of what you're doing, anybody that you think would be a good match for what you're talking about, and give them the product. And that's something a lot of authors make a mistake of, is that when they are trying to share what they're doing, they think that people are just going to hear that, well, I'm a writer, and they'll just be so wowed by the fact that you're a writer that they'll, just whatever, you had me at hello. And that's not the case. They got to see the goods. And so my whole process is to just provide them with the book, and then what I do is I usually I make additional promotional material on top of whatever the publisher does. Like I have, starting from June on, I have about 8 to 10 book promos on YouTube. I also put it on Daily Motion. I put it on a bunch of other, digital servers. And the main goal is to make your Google search for your for your book as large as possible, to sort of make the net as large as possible so that people can find you and they can find not only you, but what you're writing. And so really, the whole purpose of writing is for you to get it out of your head. But the whole purpose of publishing is to take this thing that you've created that in many ways you love and give it as good a chance as any to be discovered and to be shared. And so a big part of that is working. You
mentioned you're doing a big book promo push on YouTube. What are you doing exactly?
Well, because it's a pictorial book, what we'll do is what I did was I just made quick little promos of the images, and what I'll do is I'll just record like Carter's inauguration. I'll put that in the background with some music and just make it sort of quick, usually about 30, 50 seconds long. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, what I did was I contacted a bunch of presidential historians and individuals who have written about Jimmy Carter and asked them if they would like to review the book. And many of them said yes, so I would get these little book blurbs. And then once I did that, I would make little templates of the book cover with these quotations from these individuals. Basically, I just trying to imitate as much as possible your typical television or movie campaign when they're trying to promote, just any other product.
Right. And that's one of the things that I have played with and done because I like that too. The idea of a book trailer doesn't appeal to me a whole lot, but the idea of making it like more of a movie trailer, and it sounds like you're doing several of them, is really cool. So I think that's pretty neat.
Well, and I mean, this day and age, it has never been this easy to publish a book. Mm-hmm. It has never been this easy to get what you want out there. And so if you really want it to stick out, you have to go that extra mile. You really do. Otherwise, and even what you're doing with your podcast, I mean, it's an incredible idea to not only share what you're creating, but to give people an outlet for what they're doing.
And that's one of the reasons why I put it all together, so I could learn from everybody else who calls into the show.
Absolutely.
It's a mini workshop for me.
Yeah, of course.
That's how it started.
And, I think that's something that people forget. I think they get into the mindset of business, and that's a great mindset to have because, you want to do that. You want to be successful. But at the same time, I think they forget that the whole concept of writing is also that you're trying to share. Mm-hmm. And I think people forget that. They forget that this is really just a knowledge swap in a way.
And I think sometimes, I listen to a lot of other podcasts by other authors and things like that, and it seems like there's two extremes. There's the people who very much the business mindset, and then there's the people who are like, no, I'm just writing for me. And I just think, there's a balance somewhere in the middle. you could walk in the middle of that line, that road, and be okay. I want to come back to Arcadia. How much of the marketing is done or supported by your publisher?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I just got a call about 10 minutes before I started talking to you with the publisher, and they had a road rep who was in Plains in the neighboring communities for the past 2 days, and he's going to be there for another 2 days. And basically he just sort of takes some of the sources that I have, and then he takes some of the sources he has, and then he just uses all of the existing publication accounts that they have. And basically he just goes on sort of a marketing and promotional, splurge for the past 4 or 5 days. And then at the same time, I have about 3 or 4 publicists who put together a press release. They put their own book promo together, and they have about 4 or 5 promotional images that they've compiled together. They've also made the cover and an assortment of other things, and they're the sort of go-to people for any book signings that I have.
Now, did you have any say in the cover for your book?
They basically told me, they said, pick 5 images that you think would be good. And the image that I wanted was not picked. The image I really truly wanted was an image of planes on election night, and it's this image of just this mass of about 200-300 people, and they're all looking up at Charles Plant from the depot, and it's nighttime, and they're all, they're all sort of half asleep. They're all, they're all sort of crying, and it was just when Jimmy Carter won. And the image that they selected was of the Carters walking during their inauguration, because I think they thought that would be a better image.
Was there any discussion after they chose the image but didn't pick the one that you would have preferred? Was there any discussion about that?
No, they were just pretty adamant. I mean, frankly, they just said, we're selling Jimmy Carter as well as planes, and this is just the image that we think makes sense. It's the most dramatic, and it's important as an author for the publisher to let you get say, but I mean, you really, if you want complete compliance, you may want to pick a different profession. I mean, in all honesty, I mean, you really need, it's great that you get a say, and that's what you need to get a say. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're spending $20,000 on your product, and by God, if they want that cover, image, sure, why not?
Well, it's interesting because since you went with a traditional publisher, they've gotten, I think, an eye for what's going to sell, because that's part of their job, is to figure that out. And it's about what you just explained was a totally valid point. They're not just trying to push planes. They're trying to get people to pay attention to Jimmy Carter.
Absolutely. And and one of the interesting things that happened right in the middle of making this book was Jimmy Carter, just as I had finished it, Jimmy Carter came out that he had cancer. So there was many production meetings that we had where we said, do we need to hold the book? Do we need to wait to see what happens? Do you need to rewrite it? Should we even? Is it wrong to even have these conversations? And it was a situation where luckily I knew and was on pretty good speaking terms with his cousin. And so frequently I'd give her a call and say, how's he doing? And, and she'd say, oh, he's doing fine. And so I would tell them, he's, don't put him in the ground. He's doing okay.
Okay.
But they basically, at the end of the day, it was a very strange experience, because at the end of the day, they said that we're not going to be happy unless you write another opening and another ending just to be safe. And that's what I ended up doing. And it wasn't used because, as everybody found out later, while he's still being treated for cancer, it's in remission. But that's one of the strange things about writing this kind of book, is that part of my contract is that when he does pass on, I have to write an updated version.
And how would your updated version be different than what you have now?
It would have like I said, it would have a different ending, a different beginning, and the ending chapter would probably include new images. Okay.
So what's next for you?
Well, I have a forthcoming book, Dan McCarty, Finding Dan McCarty, that is. I'm actually talking to History Press, the sister company of Americus, about it right now. And after that, I would like to try and get the full-length Jimmy Carter book published.
Okay, so I'm not a history person. I like history, but I'm not a history buff or anything. So Finding Dan McCarty, what's that? I don't know who that is.
It is he was a Florida governor. He died while in office, and he was it was one of these situations. He was a young guy, died of a heart attack suddenly, and it created a constitutional crisis in the state. And he was a reformer, and he was replaced by the president of the state senate, who was this conservative, and who tried like hell to sort of do away with all of the reforms that he enacted.
Oh, wow.
And there was a special election for the last 2 years of Dan McCarty's term, and his best friend and his brother ran against each other for it, along with that conservative. So there was this big amount of statewide soul searching, and his best friend eventually won. And his best friend is a governor by the name of Leroy Collins, and today he's referred to as the Floridian of the century.
So when was Dan McCarty, when was he governor?
He was governor from January to September of 1953.
1953?
1953.
Okay, so now I don't feel so bad that I didn't know who he was.
You're from Nebraska. I mean, the only thing I know about Nebraska is I think Jennings Bryan came from there, right?
Who?
I think. Never mind.
I didn't hear what you said. Something Bryan? William James Bryan.
Yeah, I think he came from
God.
Nebraska, but that's the only thing I know of.
Well, there was Johnny Carson.
I guess you didn't know. Or
I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. I know a few
90
people.
years ago, so it's okay.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. Ford, Martin or Malcolm.
Yeah.
Malcolm Little, Malcolm X. There's a few famous people who have come from here from way back. But Florida, I was feeling sort of bad because I actually lived in Florida for a little while. I was thinking, did I miss something?
Florida, that's, they're not very good when it comes to remembering their history, because so many of them are, they just come in there, they migrate from there, and there's not too many native Floridians. So I'm in a car right now with 4 native Floridians, so I think this is probably our convention right now of native Floridians. This is probably the biggest grouping that there is.
So, real quick, why did you pick this for your next book, Dan McCarty? Why?
Well, it probably has to be with my granddad. He came down from New York when all of this was going on, and I heard stories of it when I was a kid. And I went to the Capitol building, and I saw this young guy who croaked at 40, and nobody really knew anything about him. When you ever talk about Dan McCarty from people who are Florida buffs, they say, "Oh yeah, he died," and that's all. That's all they say. And I said, "Well, yeah, what else?" And they're like, "Well, he was 41 and he died." I was like, "Oh, okay." So there was just this urge to find out more, and once I uncovered it, I found out that he was, he had a very dramatic sort of series of events that took place from his death and his illness, and because he had a heart attack in February. And so he was in sort of this state of constant illness until September, and there was this sort of planned coup d'état to sort of remove him, because the state senator was the next in line of succession back then, and so there was this,
sorry, we're running out of time, but the book is Finding Dan McCarty, so everybody needs to look for that. It sounds fascinating, so you'll have to let me know when you do have it out, because that sounds really interesting. But we have to get going. I want to thank you so much, Robert, for coming on the show with me on Back Porch Writer. And you have a great day, and you do have to come to Nebraska soon, because there's a lot of snow. You can play in the snow, because Florida doesn't have that. Absolutely. You have a great day.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. So Robert Buccellato, his book is Jimmy Carter in Plains, Presidential Hometown. You can find it over on Amazon for sure. I know that's where I saw it, so check that out. And then look for his next book, Finding Dan McCarty. Sounds fascinating, and I'm sure he will let me know when it comes out. You all have a great day. I'm going to get outside so I can play in the snow. Until next time, pull up a chair, sit a spell, and write.
Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Earlier this week, Claire Tippins shared a princess nickname generator, 3 pictures of her dog wearing a tutu, and 2 online quizzes, including what candy is your dream castle made of? Claire, your